The mining colony was quiet except for the sound of drills and heavy machines. Amir worked there every day, carrying tools, fixing pipes, and making sure the tunnels did not collapse. Life was simple, but it was also lonely. The colony was far from Earth, far from big cities, and far from anything exciting. Most workers lived in small rooms, ate simple food, and spoke only about work. Amir often dreamed of something different, but dreams had no place in a colony built only for survival. One evening, as the workers finished their shift, Amir decided to take a longer path back. He liked walking on the surface of the rocky world, where the stars looked brighter than anywhere else. The air was thin, so he wore his breathing mask, but the silence above ground gave him peace. On this night, something unusual caught his eye. A streak of light had fallen across the sky. At first, he thought it was a shooting star, but it landed too close and too heavy. A distant crash shook the ground beneath his boots. Curiosity pulled him forward. Amir followed the smoke until he reached a broken ridge. There, half buried in the sand and stone, was a strange object. It was not any mining machine he had seen before. It was shaped like a ship, smooth and shining even under layers of dust. Sparks flickered from broken panels, and faint light glowed from within. His heart raced. He knew this was not human. Cautiously, Amir climbed down toward the wreck. A soft sound came from inside, almost like a cry. He pushed aside a fallen piece of metal and saw her. She was lying against the wall of the ship, breathing weakly. She looked human in shape but different in detail. Her skin was pale with a faint silver tone, her eyes large and shining like liquid crystal. Her hair fell in soft strands that seemed almost metallic in color. She wore a torn uniform made of material he had never seen before. Amir froze. Stories had always spoken of aliens, but no one in his colony had ever seen one. Fear gripped him, but when he saw the pain on her face, another feeling rose, stronger compassion. She tried to speak, but her words were broken. He could not understand her language, yet the tone was clear. She was asking for help. Without thinking further, Amir pulled off his pack and searched for a water container. He offered it to her carefully. She took a small sip, her hands trembling. Her eyes met his, and though no words passed between them, he felt her gratitude. The wreck made strange noises as sparks continued to fly. Amir knew patrol ships might come soon to investigate. If they found her, they might take her away or worse. The colony did not allow contact with outsiders. Rules were strict, and breaking them could mean punishment. But Amir could not leave her here. He leaned closer and spoke softly, though he doubted she understood. "I will help you." Slowly, he lifted her from the broken seat. She was lighter than he expected, though weak and unsteady. She rested her head against his shoulder, her breathing shallow. He climbed out of the wreck with effort, careful not to drop her. The desert wind swept around them as he made his way back to the tunnels. Instead of entering through the main gate, Amir led her to a hidden path that only a few miners used. It went down into an unused shaft, where no guards ever checked. He carried her inside and laid her gently on a bed of cloth in his small storage space. She looked around with tired eyes, as if trying to understand where she was. Amir lit a small lamp and checked her wounds. A cut on her arm was deep, and her side was bruised. He cleaned the blood as best as he could and wrapped it with cloth. She winced but did not resist. When he finished, she touched his hand lightly, giving a small nod. For the first time, she tried again to speak. The words were strange, but slowly, a few became clear. Nira, she said, pointing to herself. Amir repeated softly, Nira. Her lips curved into a faint smile, though she was still in pain. She then pointed at him, waiting. Amir, he answered. Her eyes shone with recognition. She repeated his name with effort, Amir. It was a simple moment, but it felt powerful. Two beings from different worlds, sharing names under the dim light of an old mining shaft. Amir felt a warmth inside his chest, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. He knew nothing about her past, her people, or why her ship had fallen. But he knew one thing: he could not abandon her. As Nira closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, Amir sat nearby, listening to the faint hum of machines outside. He wondered what tomorrow would bring. For years, his life had been dull and predictable. But now, hidden in his small shelter, was a secret that could change everything. The stars above the colony seemed brighter that night, as if the universe itself had shifted. Amir had saved a life, but deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning of something far greater than he could imagine. The next morning, Amir woke early. He checked the storage space where Nira was resting. She was still asleep, her breathing more steady than the night before. The cut on her arm was covered, and the cloth was stained, but she looked less pale. Amir felt a quiet relief. He stepped outside the shaft to join the other miners for work. The colony was strict about attendance, and if anyone noticed he was missing, questions would come. All day, while others drilled rock and carried loads, Amir's thoughts stayed on the hidden space. He worried someone might discover her or that she might try to leave before she was strong enough. When his shift ended, Amir returned quickly. As he pushed open the old metal door, he saw her sitting up. She had found a lamp and was studying the small tools and wires he kept on the shelf. When she noticed him, she smiled weakly. "You are safe," Amir said softly, though he knew she did not understand every word. Nira tilted her head, listening. Then she repeated carefully, "Safe." Amir was surprised. She was trying to learn his language. Slowly, he sat across from her and pointed at simple things around the room. "Lamp," he said. She repeated, "Lamp." He pointed at himself. "Amir." She answered, "Amir." Then she placed a hand on her chest. "Nira." This became their pattern for the next few days. Amir brought her food and water from the colony kitchens, always careful to hide extra portions under his jacket. At first, Nira struggled with the rough human food, but she adapted, taking only what she needed. In return, she shared small things from her world. With gestures and broken words, she explained that her people traveled the stars with great ships. She told him her ship had been attacked, though she could not explain by whom. At night, when the colony slept, Amir listened to her voice. Even when he did not understand every word, her tone carried warmth. He realized she trusted him fully. One evening, as they sat under the dim lamp, Nira drew patterns in the dust with her finger. Circles within circles, connected by lines. She pointed upward, toward the roof of the shaft. Amir understood. She was drawing stars. She tapped one circle and said a word he did not know, then tapped another and repeated it. Amir guessed these were her home stars, far away from his colony. When she finished, she looked at him with serious eyes. She pointed at him, then at the stars, then shook her head. Amir understood her meaning. Humans did not travel so far. His kind had small colonies and weak ships. Her kind ruled the skies. Amir felt a sting of shame, but Nira quickly touched his hand and smiled. In her eyes, there was no judgment, only gratitude. She whispered his name again, Amir, as if it meant safety to her. The days passed quietly, but tension grew in the colony. Workers had seen smoke in the distance from the crash site, and patrol guards had been sent to search. Rumors spread that smugglers or raiders had landed. Amir listened carefully and knew he must be cautious. One night, as he prepared food for Nira, he heard voices above the shaft. Guards were nearby. He hurried back inside and whispered, "Quiet." Nira understood at once and lay still, holding her breath. The sound of boots echoed above them, but after a while, it faded away. Amir let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Nira looked at him with calm eyes, as if she trusted him completely. In those moments, Amir felt both fear and pride. He had never done anything so dangerous. If the guards found her, he would face punishment, and she might be taken away. But when he looked at her, weak but still smiling, he knew he could not regret his choice. Over the next week, Nira grew stronger. She could stand and walk slowly around the small space. She practiced words with Amir, pointing at objects and repeating them until her speech became clearer. She laughed when she made mistakes, and Amir laughed with her. One evening, Nira looked at him with bright eyes and said in careful human words, "Amir good." He smiled at her attempt and answered, "Nira's strong." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment, they sat in silence. It was not the silence of fear but the silence of comfort. Amir realized how close they had become in such a short time. She was no longer only an alien he had rescued. She was someone who made his lonely world feel alive. Still, questions filled his mind. What if her people came looking for her? What if the colony discovered his secret? He pushed those thoughts aside for now. What mattered was that Nira was safe, and she trusted him. As the lamp flickered, Amir lay back against the wall and listened to the steady sound of her breathing. For the first time in years, he felt that his life had a purpose beyond mining and routine. In his hidden space deep underground, a secret bond was forming, fragile, uncertain, but real. He did not know what the future held, but he knew this: he would protect Nira for as long as he could. The weeks passed, and Nira's strength slowly returned. The pale color of her skin grew brighter, and the weak tone of her voice became firm again. She could now walk with confidence through the narrow space, though she often touched the walls for balance. Amir watched her every day, proud of her recovery yet worried about what would happen next. They had built a language of their own. With gestures, simple words, and patient practice, they understood each other more than before. Amir taught her the names of tools, food, and stars as humans knew them. Nira, in return, showed him signs and symbols from her people. Sometimes, she laughed at his clumsy attempts to copy her words. Other times, she listened carefully as he spoke, her eyes shining with interest. One night, as they shared a meal, Nira grew serious. She placed her hand over her chest and said, "Beacon." Then she pointed upward. Amir frowned, unsure. She repeated the word and tapped a small device she had hidden inside the cloth she wore. Its surface glowed faintly with blue light. Amir understood at last. It was a distress beacon. She had activated it, and soon, her people would come. The thought struck him deeply. He had known this moment would arrive, but facing it was harder than he imagined. If her people came, she would leave. Their secret nights of laughter and learning would end. She would return to the stars where he could never follow. Still, Amir nodded. Good, he said softly, though his heart felt heavy. You will be safe. Nero looked at him for a long time, her silver eyes filled with something he could not read. Then she whispered his name, Amir. She did not smile as she often did. Instead, her voice carried sadness. The following days were filled with tension. Patrol ships from the colony still searched the skies, but Nira told him with gestures that her people's craft would not take long to arrive. She spoke of honor, of duty, and of returning home. Amir listened quietly, pretending to be glad, but each word was like a stone in his chest. One evening, as they watched the faint light of the lamp, Amir asked quietly, "When you go, will you forget me?" Nira's eyes widened. She shook her head firmly. No, she reached out and touched his hand, pressing it gently. Then she said in halting human words, "Amir, heart strong." Her answer stayed with him through the night. On the 5th day after the beacon was activated, the colony sky lit with strange lights. Amir was on the surface when he saw them, 3 sleek ships, unlike anything built by humans. They glided like shadows across the stars, then slowed as they approached the desert plains. Dust rose high as one landed not far from the old ridge where Amir had first found Nira. Fear and excitement battled within him. He returned quickly to the shaft where she waited. Nira already knew. She stood tall, her hair shining in the dim light, her eyes steady. She looked stronger than the girl he had carried from the wreck, but her gaze held sorrow. "They come," she said simply. Amir swallowed hard. He wanted to ask her to stay, but he knew it was impossible. Her place was among her people, not hidden in the corner of a human mining colony. Still, his heart refused to let go. He guided her out of the shaft and toward the surface. The night air was sharp, and the sky glowed with the light of the alien craft. As they walked, Amir felt as if each step pulled her farther away from him. When they reached the landing site, figures in silver uniforms stepped forward. Their faces were calm but stern, their movements precise. One of them bowed slightly to Nira, speaking in a language Amir did not understand. She answered with confidence, her voice carrying authority. The alien officer looked at Amir briefly but said nothing. It was clear to Amir that he was only a worker, small and unimportant to them. Yet Nira did not let go of his hand. She turned to him and spoke slowly in human words. "Amir, save me. Amir, friend." The officers exchanged glances, but Nira's tone left no room for doubt. She stepped closer to Amir and whispered softly so only he could hear. "I not forget. You kind. You strong. You different." Her eyes lingered on his face, as if memorizing every detail. Then, with visible effort, she released his hand and walked toward the ship. Amir stood frozen, watching her climb the ramp. The engines began to hum, and light filled the ground. Amir lifted his arm to shield his eyes. He felt the heat of the thrusters, the rush of air as the ship lifted. Higher and higher it rose, until it was only a star among stars. Silence returned to the desert. Amir stood alone, the wind brushing against him. For a long time, he did not move. When he finally walked back to the colony, the night felt heavier. His small room, once filled with laughter and new words, was now empty. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering her voice and her touch. Though she was gone, something inside him had changed. The mining colony no longer felt like the center of his world. The universe was wider, brighter, and filled with mysteries. He had seen it in her eyes. He had felt it in her presence. Amir did not know if he would ever see Nira again, but he carried her memory like a flame in the darkness. And though the colony returned to its routine, Amir knew his life would never be the same. Years passed after the night Nira left. Amir's life in the mining colony returned to its old rhythm. The drills still thundered through the rock, the air still tasted of dust, and the days still blended into each other. Yet Amir was no longer the same. He carried memories of silver eyes, quiet words, and a bond that no one else could understand. Sometimes, when the colony's sky was clear, he looked up at the stars and wondered if she thought of him. He imagined her traveling across distant systems, far beyond his reach. Time made the memory softer, but it never disappeared. Deep inside, Amir believed he would never see her again. Then, one evening, the colony sky burned with light. It was not the streak of a falling ship this time, but the arrival of something greater. Massive vessels appeared above the desert horizon, their sleek shapes covering the stars. Alarms sounded across the settlement, and workers ran in fear, believing an invasion had begun. Amir rushed outside with the others. The air shook as one of the great ships descended slowly, casting a shadow across the colony. Its hull gleamed like polished silver, and its engines hummed with controlled power. Dust spiraled upward as the vessel settled on the ground beyond the walls. Guards gathered nervously, weapons in hand, while leaders shouted orders. But no attack came. Instead, a platform extended from the ship, and figures in regal clothing stepped down. Their movements were graceful, their presence commanding. The colonists whispered in fear, certain that their lives were about to change. Among those figures was someone Amir recognized at once. She stood tall, wearing garments of deep blue and silver, her hair shining under the alien lights. Her eyes, bright as crystal, searched the crowd until they found him. It was Nira. Amir's breath caught. He had imagined seeing her again many times, but the reality was overwhelming. She was no longer the fragile survivor he had carried from a wreck. She looked strong, confident, and filled with authority. Yet when she saw him, her face softened, and her lips curved into a smile only he would recognize. The alien envoys spoke to the colony leaders in their language, but Nira stepped forward before them all. Her voice rang clear, and this time she spoke in human words, though accented. "I have come for Amir." Gasps spread through the crowd. The guards lowered their weapons in confusion, and the leaders exchanged uncertain looks. Amir himself stood frozen, unable to move. Nira walked toward him, her step steady, her gaze fixed on his face. When she reached him, she stopped only a few feet away. For a moment, silence hung heavy around them. Then she spoke softly, as if the entire colony had vanished. "You saved me. You gave me hope when I had none. I told you I would not forget. I have returned." Amir's heart pounded. He wanted to speak, but his voice failed. He had dreamed of this, yet it felt unreal. "Nira," he finally whispered. Her eyes glistened at the sound of her name. She turned then to the colonists and leaders. Her tone grew formal, commanding respect. "This man is not only my rescuer. He is the one I have chosen. I am not only Nira, a traveler you once sheltered. I am Nira of the royal house, daughter of my people's high council." Shock rippled through the crowd. Amir stared at her in disbelief. Royal house. He had never guessed. To him, she had been a wounded girl hiding in his shaft, laughing at words she barely understood. Now she stood revealed as a leader among stars. The alien envoys stepped closer, their expressions uneasy. They spoke quickly in their own tongue, urging her back, but Nira raised her hand firmly. "No," she said. "My choice is made." Amir finally found his voice. "Why me?" His words were quiet but filled with confusion. "I am only a miner. I have nothing to give." Nira shook her head. "You gave me everything when you risked your life for mine. In my world, power is measured by ships and crowns. But you showed me a strength greater than both. Kindness. Courage. Humanity." Her words struck him deeply. The colonists watched in silence, unsure whether to fear or admire what was unfolding. Nira extended her hand toward Amir. "I did not return only to honor my dead. I returned because I choose you. Not as a ruler, but as Nira, the one you once carried from the fire." Amir looked at her hand, trembling inside. He thought of the long years of dust and silence, of nights spent staring at the stars. He thought of the lonely life he had accepted. Now, standing before him, was the girl he thought lost forever, offering him a place in a world beyond his imagination. Slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The crowd erupted in murmurs, the leaders protested, and the envoys looked uneasy, but none of that mattered. At that moment, it was only Amir and Nira, reunited under the vast desert sky. The great ship stood waiting, its lights glowing, its engines quiet. For Amir, the universe had just opened. And for Nira, a promise made long ago was finally fulfilled. The news of Nira's return spread quickly across the colony. Workers whispered in shock, guards debated what to do, and leaders argued in private chambers. Never before had such a powerful alien vessel landed on their soil. To them, Nira was not only a visitor but a storm that might change their quiet world forever. Amir felt the weight of this change more than anyone. He had never asked for attention, but now every eye followed him. The miner who once lived in silence was suddenly at the center of a story greater than the colony itself. And the story only grew louder when Nira stood before everyone and declared her choice. Not all were pleased. The alien envoys who had come with Nira approached her in private. Amir was not allowed to enter the chamber, but from the hallway he could hear their raised voices. Their language was fast and sharp, filled with tones of disapproval. When Nira stepped out again, her expression was calm, but her eyes carried strain. Amir asked quietly, "What do they say?" She hesitated, then answered in simple human words. "They say no. They say you are less." Amir lowered his gaze. He had expected this. To them, he was only a miner, a man who worked with dirt and stone. His tools were primitive compared to their ships that crossed the stars. His world was small compared to their empire. Of course, they would see him as unworthy. But Nira placed her hand on his arm. "I say yes. I say Amir is strong. Stronger than they know." Her words warmed him, yet the doubt remained. That evening, the colony leaders called a meeting. They wished to know what these visitors planned. Inside the hall, the humans sat on one side of the long table while the alien envoys sat on the other. Amir was asked to sit with Nira, though he felt out of place among uniforms and shining robes. One envoy, tall and stern, spoke through a translator. "Our princess owes you her life. For that, we honor you. But you must understand. She is of high blood. She belongs to the Council of Stars. A union with a human is not our way." The hall filled with murmurs. The human leaders looked uneasy. They had never imagined a miner might draw such attention, nor did they want to provoke a conflict with a powerful empire. Amir felt the eyes of both sides upon him. He wanted to shrink into silence, but Nira stood firmly and answered. I am not a token to be traded. I choose with my heart. Amir saved me when I was nothing. He saw me not as a princess but as a person. I will not abandon that truth. The envoy's voice sharpened. Your heart blinds you. Humans are fragile. They lack wisdom. Their lives are short. How can one such as he stand beside you in the council of stars? The words struck Amir hard. He clenched his fists, ashamed that he could not argue. But Nira turned to him, her eyes fierce. Do not listen, she said softly. You are more than they see. The meeting ended without agreement. The envoys demanded Nira return to her ship at once, but she refused. She stayed in the colony, walking openly with Amir, speaking to the workers, and showing no fear. Some humans began to admire her courage, while others worried her presence would bring danger. That night, under the open sky, Amir spoke his heart. Nira, I am only one man. They are right. I cannot give you what your people can. I cannot travel the stars. I cannot lead an empire. Nira shook her head firmly. I do not need stars. I need truth. You gave me life when I was broken. You gave me light when I had only darkness. That is greater than crowns. Her words gave him strength, but still the conflict grew. The alien envoys spread word that if she continued her choice, there would be consequences. They warned the humans that their colony might lose trade and protection. Pressure built on Amir from both sides. Yet something unexpected happened. The workers, who had always seen Amir as quiet and ordinary, began to speak in his defense. They remembered how he had risked punishment to bring them food during shortages, how he had repaired machines without asking for reward, how he had worked harder than anyone to keep the colony safe. To them, Amir was not weak. He was steady. He was reliable. When one elder spoke these words aloud, even the alien envoys paused. They looked at Amir again, not as a miner but as someone others trusted. Still, the conflict was not over. The council of Nira's people would demand proof, and they would not accept words alone. They wanted to see whether Amir could face a trial of worth. When Nira told him of this, Amir felt fear. But he also felt a strange calm. He had lived his whole life thinking he was small, yet now he had the chance to show that being human meant more than power or crowns. He looked into Nira's shining eyes and said, if they want to see, then I will show them. The day of the trial arrived. The alien envoys prepared a special arena outside the colony. It was not a place of combat with weapons, but a place designed to measure spirit, patience, and strength of mind. The humans gathered at the edges, nervous but curious. They had never seen such a test before. Amir stood in the center, his hands steady though his heart beat fast. He wore no armor, carried no tool, only the plain clothes of a miner. Around him, strange devices hummed, glowing with soft light. The envoys explained that the trial would show if Amir could endure challenges meant to break fear, confusion, and doubt. Nira stood near the edge, her eyes fixed on him. She had argued against this test, but the envoys refused to bend. To them, Amir had to prove himself. To her, he already had. Still, she whispered before he stepped inside, remember who you are. You are more than they think. The first challenge began. A wall of shifting light rose around Amir, showing images meant to test his resolve. He saw visions of endless tunnels collapsing, the life of the colony falling to ruin. He heard voices crying out, calling for help. It felt real, but Amir closed his eyes and whispered to himself, This is not truth. This is fear. He breathed deeply and remembered how many times he had faced danger in the mines. He had always kept calm. He walked forward, and the vision broke apart like smoke. The second challenge came. A puzzle of moving stones rose before him. Each block was heavy, impossible to lift with simple strength. The envoys watched closely, waiting for him to fail. But Amir did not rush. He studied the pieces and found the balance between them. With patience, he shifted one at a time, using small movements that created space for larger ones. Slowly, the wall opened. What seemed like force became wisdom, and the envoys exchanged uncertain glances. The third challenge was harder. A storm of sound filled the arena, sharp and loud, meant to shatter focus. The lights around him flared, blinding his eyes. Amir stumbled, covering his ears. Doubt struck him at last. He thought of leaving, of giving up, of returning to the quiet life he had always known. But then he remembered Nira. He remembered her weak and broken in his arms, her trust when she could have chosen fear, her smile when she learned her first human word. He lifted his head and whispered her name, Nira. The storm lost its grip on him. He stood tall, and though the sound raged around him, he walked through it. Step by step, he crossed until the noise faded and the light dimmed. The final challenge appeared. A figure rose from the ground, shaped like Amir himself but colder, darker, filled with scorn. It spoke with his own voice. You are nothing. You are a miner of dust. She belongs to the stars, not to you. Leave her. Accept your place. Amir felt his knees weaken. The words were heavy because they were his own hidden fears. For years, he had told himself he was small, unimportant. Now those fears stood before him, alive. But then he remembered Nira's words on the night she left. I not forget. You kind. You strong. You different. Amir lifted his head and faced the shadow. I am Amir. I may be a miner, but I do not measure myself by crowns or stars. I measure myself by the truth of my heart. And my heart does not bend. The shadow screamed and vanished into light. Silence fell across the arena. The envoys looked at one another, their pride shaken. They had expected a man to fall, but instead, he had stood. Not with power, not with weapons, but with simple will. Nira rushed forward, her face bright with pride. She took Amir's hands and whispered, I knew. I knew you would win. One envoy finally spoke aloud, his voice respectful for the first time. The trial is complete. This human has passed. The humans in the crowd cheered. Many had doubted, but now they saw that one of their own could stand equal before the stars. Amir felt the sound wash over him, but his eyes stayed on Nira. That night, the colony was alive with talk. Some spoke with awe, others with doubt, but all knew the truth. Amir had faced the trial and prevailed. He had proven that humanity's strength was not measured in ships or weapons but in courage and heart. Later, under the quiet sky, Amir and Nira walked together. She held his hand tightly and said, Now they see. But I saw before all. You are not small, Amir. You are more than they can imagine. Amir looked at her and felt peace. The stars no longer seemed distant. With her beside him, they felt close, as if within reach. The trial was over, but their journey was only beginning. The days after the trial were filled with change. The colony was no longer quiet. Every corner carried whispers about Amir and the alien girl he had rescued. Some spoke with pride, saying his courage had shown humanity's strength. Others still doubted, unsure of what it meant to welcome an alien who spoke of marriage and bond. But no one could ignore what had happened. Amir had faced the test of the envoys, and he had passed. Nira stayed close to Amir. She no longer looked like the weak traveler he had once saved. She now walked with a steady step and a calm fire in her eyes. Yet, when she stood beside Amir, her expression softened. She looked at him not as a champion of humans, but as the man who had once carried her when she was helpless. One evening, the Council of Elders gathered with the alien envoys. The largest hall of the colony was filled with people who wanted answers. Amir stood at the front, Nero beside him. The eldest council member raised his hand. His voice was steady but kind. "Amir," he said, "you have done what no one thought possible. You faced their test and endured. We ask you now, what future do you see for yourself, for this colony, and for the one you call your bride?" The hall grew silent. Amir looked around, seeing the faces of miners, farmers, builders, and children. He saw fear and hope mixing in their eyes. Slowly, he spoke. "I never asked for this trial. I never asked to stand before envoys or speak for all of us. But when Nira came into my life, I learned something. She trusted me when she had no reason to. She believed in me when I doubted myself. If someone from the stars can see worth in a miner like me, then maybe all of us carry worth greater than we know. My future is simple. I choose to walk it with her, and together, we can help our people and her people understand one another." His words were not grand, but they carried truth. The crowd listened in silence. Nira stepped forward after him. She spoke slowly in human tongue, her voice clear though accented. "I am Nira. My people look to power, but I look to heart. Amir saved me not because of gain but because he cared. That is why I return. That is why I choose him. If his people accept me, then my people will also learn to see different. We can build not walls, but bridges." Her words stirred the crowd. The alien envoys looked at one another. At last, one of them nodded. "The bond between you is strong. Stronger than our doubts. If you choose each other, then let this be a sign that our worlds may learn together. We will not oppose." A cheer rose in the hall. Children clapped, voices echoed, and even the cautious elders could not hide their relief. For the first time, the idea of peace between two distant peoples felt real. That night, the colony celebrated. Lanterns were lit across the streets. Music filled the air. Food was shared, and laughter broke the long tension that had hung for days. Amir walked through it all with Nira at his side. Everywhere they went, people greeted them, some with cautious smiles, others with open joy. When the stars rose high, Amir and Nira slipped away to a quiet hill outside the colony. The land stretched wide before them, open and silent under the sky. Nira sat close to Amir, holding his hand. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Feel what?" Amir replied. "The stars. They are not far. They are waiting. For you, for me, for all of us. Together, we can reach them." Amir looked up at the sky. For most of his life, the stars had been only distant lights, unreachable and silent. Now, with her beside him, they felt near. He turned to her and said, "Wherever they lead, I will go, as long as you walk with me." She smiled, her eyes shining with quiet warmth. "Then we begin a new path. Not only for us, but for all who come after." They sat together in silence for a long time, watching the stars. The air was cool, the world calm. Amir felt a deep peace he had never known before. He had been a miner, a simple man who thought little of himself. But now he had faced trials, stood before envoys, and found love that reached beyond worlds. In the days that followed, life in the colony moved forward, but something was different. People no longer spoke of limits with the same certainty. Children looked at the stars with wonder, and workers spoke of new hope. Amir and Nero became a symbol not of power, but of trust and unity. One morning, as the sun rose, Nero placed her hand on Amir's and said, "From the day you carried me from the shadows, I knew. You are my home. Now, let us build a new one together." Amir nodded, his voice steady. "Yes. Together." And so their journey did not end but began anew. A miner and an alien girl, bound not by command but by choice, stood ready to face whatever the stars would bring. For in the heart of one human, and the trust of one alien, a bridge between worlds had been built. And from that bridge, a future of endless paths awaited.